represents some sector in the ecosystem, right? From a building point of view, from human development elements, from financing, all of these things. And I would like us to engage in a debate on how are we going to make this possible? How are we going to make these things that are about data, which is non-physical, very abstract, how do we make this tangible for us to start applying in our lives today even, that we can then go forward? Now, Reinoud, I know you do a lot of work in preparing the youth for the workplace. What sort of conversations are you having with them around the fourth industrial revolution and how they can prepare themselves for the future of work?
Thank you, Marang. Yeah, interesting question. My take on it is that the fourth industrial revolution, first and foremost, required for a person to know themselves very deeply. If you don't know who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, you won't be able to cope with it. So what we primarily focus on is, or actually the second element there is that to get to know yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, you need a high level of human interaction. So I don't believe, primarily that we need to provide them with tools that are presented on apps and technical platforms. I think we need to focus on building human relationships as the primary core. Once they know who they are and they have a very strong belief of self, they can tackle the fourth industrial revolution. Everybody that has young children know, and a 2-year-old knows how to unlock a phone and start taking pictures and do whatever. I'm not afraid that anybody in the township or wherever in the world won't be able to catch up with technology. I think but first and foremost, what they have lack of is, in my view, in my experience, is that they don't grow up in an rich enough human environment. And that's what we, as the Experience Factory, really try to build into our program, that they are resilient for whatever change we make.
So I'm not going to ask you the same question to answer it, right? Because it kills a lot of the time. But so in the context of work and how we then get more and more human-centric around this, there is automated processes. Now, I know I'm in that field, so I automate business processes and I enjoy doing stuff. But I cannot discount the fact that there's going to be job losses in this equation. But at the same time, there's going to be new opportunities that are created because of this equation. How do we then make sure that as automation comes into the business place, and it comes into our work environments and into our buildings, that we are able to engage with it in a way that makes sense so that we understand the impact of our behavior in the future development space of it?
Okay, thank you. I think the most important thing that we need to have at the back of our mind is what are the key drivers of the fourth industrial revolution? Putting it in context, if you look at the first industrial revolution, it was the mechanization that was the driver of the first industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution, it was the mass production, was the era of mass production. The third was automation, backed by electronic system. Now we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, which is being driven by the need for digitalization. Now, in the context of Africa and with regards to the socio-economic benefit of it, how are we prepared? How do we, looking at it as an African, we really missed out on the first, second, and perhaps the third industrial revolution. Now, how do we leapfrog? I think the most important thing, there are three key components that we need to put our hands on. So the first one is how do we become more innovation-driven as African, and how do we build the right talent, which is very, very key. Now, the last one is the mindset. The mindset of the general population. We have to become more engaging, more participatory in the bigger scheme of things. Because if you look at Africa, we consume services from the rest of the world. Whether we're buying manufactured goods from China or we're taking services from US-based companies, how do we participate? Because the more we participate, the more we're engaged, the more we build the right human capacity to create value.
Just to add to that, I think you stole all my answers, but it's exactly that. It's like building that mindset, and it's got to be a growth mindset. We can't think about the ways things used to be done and the past and kind of try and do things the same way and get left behind. Really, it's not a question of whether we or whether we're going to get disrupted. It's when we're going to get disrupted. So we've really got to be forward-looking as consumers, as businesses, as stakeholders, as politicians, and think about how can we prepare for the next 10 to 20 years.
So then taking into account how we've applied traditional formulas into how we're building today, though, a lot of us sit here with small businesses that we're looking to say, okay, I want to be ready, but I don't know how to be ready. And some of that requires some sort of capital, and then you end up in spaces where actually your request for capital is declined because the old formula of how we measure things is not available to you. How do we merge that, and how do we get the everyday small business owner get up and prepared? Because then you can't keep talking about get prepared, and yet we're changing nothing in our business models to engage with them at that level.
So I think we first of all need to look at it from the point of creating value. That takes away, that is usually the game changer. I'm a foreigner here. Or if you look at Africa, coming from Africa, one of the reality that struck me at some point in my career was that software industry is $21 billion industry in Africa. But you don't have an African company, maybe with the exception of the likes of Dimension Data and Freeborn, that are participating in that environment. Now, talking about SME, if you look at it from the point of creating value, and when I mean creating value, it means that we create African-focused solutions. No one understands our environment more than us. So as an entrepreneur, if you look at the problem and challenges within the context of our environment, and with a mindset that we're going to create or solve the problems that we have. Now, using whether digitalization or automation, now it's the first steps in the right direction. Now, the second step is how do we get the right funding, to make it happen, which is where we're going to need the help of the business community, the right policy from the government. And what is interesting is that there are a lot of grants that are being given to African-based startups, from Bill & Melinda Foundation, MasterCard Foundation, and so on and so forth. So the pool of funds out there is for us to be able to articulate the right solutions for our problems and say to these guys that, no, we've come up with a blueprint or a minimum viable product to solve a specific problem. How do you help us to commercialize it?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think that's exactly it. You can't be standing still and just doing the same thing that you've been doing again. It's about kind of, you mentioned that innovation-driven kind of thought. So even as an SME, you've got to be thinking, what can I do differently? What can I do better? What's going to set me apart from the next person? And that would actually attract the funding. But no one's going to give you funding or any kind of support if you're just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. Like, you can't escape the reality that business is competitive and people want to back things. It sounds harsh, but unfortunately, sometimes reality can be.
But I think we also need to take into account that not all of us are doing copycat type of businesses, right? However, the formula applied to me accessing that funding is pretty much one tone. So the measures are the same for all of us, irrespective of what you're bringing into the table, those measures are the same. And I think that's where my question is at, is that the traditional models of valuing a business and for saying, yes, you're going to get funding or not, hasn't changed, irrespective of how dynamic or innovative my business could be in terms of what I'm bringing to the table. So if it's unfamiliar, it scares them even the most, and they don't know where to put it or how to even measure it. So it's a no because actually I'm just not ready to have this conversation.
So I think there's in South Africa, the funding landscape is definitely lagging behind the rest of the world. So there aren't a lot of people willing to take risks on unproven business models. Like, don't waste your time going to a bank if you're coming up with a startup. Like, they're looking for a much bigger check size. So I guess it's researching and approaching the right people for your company at the stage and the deal size that you're looking for is important. And there's a kind of groundswell happening where you're seeing a rise of angel investors coming through, venture capital funds moving further down in the earlier stages. So there are opportunities. I think grant funding is also a really good opportunity in South Africa for funding, especially for innovation. But yeah, do your own research on where to get the money from. Don't waste your time with banks.
No, I think an interesting question that you asked, and I pointed it out to you before. But with the rise of the fourth industrial revolution, and what I pointed out earlier, more people have to rely on their own strength and on their own human capital. And the rise in more self-employed people, banks and funders really need to rethink how are they going to value human capital as an asset. Because at the moment, you are an attribute, you won't get funding. I run another business executive experience factory, also a consultancy firm. I don't even get an overdraft because the systems don't allow it. They look at my figures, they say it's all perfectly fine, and then they say, you can get a loan. I said, perfect. What's your ID? I said, sorry, I don't have an ID yet. I'm a foreigner. No, the system won't allow it. And there you go. And what do? I have cash flow problems. And now I have maybe $500,000 in contracts to show for. And I think, and these are innovative banks, or at least that's what they say. So what I also want to point out on the innovation and copycat as well. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I follow the news in Western Europe every day. One of the things that strike me a bit in South Africa in particular is that we keep on copying systems that are almost at the point that they're failed in Europe. We putting demands on younger on young kids to perform at school, whereas in Europe there's a growing movement of getting away with tests because psychologists and educators.
What can we do today to get us in the right track?
Well, it's a very broad question that you can tackle from a very wide variety of angles.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to what the individual can do. The one comment that I want to make, and I speak completely without having any personal background in it, but for a graduate from a rural area or township that comes through the ranks, there's a massive pressure to get that job because it's still the mindset in the family, and we can't take that away. It's a reality for them. So we can say to them, you have to do A, B, C, D. That's the reality. And I'm not 100% sure how to tackle that. I think that's a broad conversation that we need to have. On an individual level, I think that if we want to grow the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the SMEs, which is something that's tremendously important, we need to understand that a successful entrepreneur will have a first employee. And the first employee is as important as the entrepreneur itself, because it has a different mindset. And I think that for many youth that wants to be employed, that's an opportunity they overlook. And that requires a different, almost a different educational system. Gearing up for a job at Discovery or one of the big banks for being the first employee is a totally different mindset. But you not necessarily take personal risks with the entrepreneur, but you have to have the same flexibility of unstable working hours, not necessarily knowing whether it's salary coming on the 26th or the second or next month. If it is in food or not. The benefits might not be as fancy as with this company, but it is a really, really important opportunity for them. And I think that's one of the biggest. And after the first employee is actually the second employee.
What are the opportunities that exist?
What can we take advantage of?
So I think it's important that you kind of educate people to be more long-term thinkers as well. So, you know, exactly, like taking that job that's on the horizon, that means you're going to get a stable paycheck now, and you know it's going to be twice as much as you earn as when you started a startup. But in 10 years, that startup might be worth, you know, so much more than what you're, and you're still stuck in this dead-end job. So, you know, you've got to think long-term, and it's always difficult to think long-term when there's like no food on the table. Like I've been there, it's just like I'll take whatever job I can get. But that is really the mindset we need to start adopting. I think, like you mentioned, we are getting left behind just by the basic infrastructure. So I think they mentioned something like 50% of the world hasn't yet experienced the third industrial revolution in terms of internet access. So when you put that into context, in terms of outworking economics and everything, like we still need to leapfrog the third to get us up to speed.
Do you think we have the right mindset about it though? Just from the general perception and experience of other people, do you think, because it's easy for the techies to speak about this anyway, because we're in that world, but for everyday people, is it something that our mindset are yet to adopt, or is it still too unfamiliar and unrealistic for us?
So I think a lot of your education has to happen outside of the traditional schooling system, because the schooling system is still stuck in probably the second industrial revolution in terms of production line, that kind of space. Whereas you've got to educate yourself outside of traditional structures and think of yourself as a startup and think about how you can create that. Because as long as you keep doing that, you A, going to be employable, or B, find an opportunity to create something for others.
So I think you're spot on that. And if you look at the educational system that we have, it was actually conceived in the Victorian age. And looking at where we are as humanity, I think one of the things we need to start focusing on from the perspective of our education system is, rather than telling our kids or younger ones what do they want to become when they grow up, we should be asking them, what problem do you want to solve? And I see that happening today. I mean, my kids, I don't ask them, do you want to be a lawyer or do you want to be a doctor? I ask them, what problem do you want to solve? And from that perspective, you are gradually sowing the seed of entrepreneurship in them. You know, and once we get it right from that early stages in life, it will be part of them going into the future. And also, we would now help them, we'll be able to help them to marry whatever they are learning in school from academic perspective with the reality in today's world.
I'd just like to acknowledge that Thabang has joined us on stage, and I'll include you in the conversation. Won't put you in a hot seat right immediately. But I think, let me ask you then, Thabang, then in the context of the fourth industrial revolution and opportunities and the risks that are presented with it, are you optimistic? And what about? So if you're not optimistic, what are you pessimistic about? But if you are optimistic, what are you optimistic about?
Thank you. Well, looking at it just from a legal perspective, more especially from the labor law perspective, one can say it's difficult to be optimistic. One just has to look at the recent stats from the Stats SA. In the first quarter, I think we shared about 69,000 jobs. And our predictions is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think one of my colleagues was saying people should be asking themselves what problem you need to solve. That's what employers are doing. Employers are asking themselves, what problem do I have and how can I solve it? They're more interested in saying, what resources do I have? They look at the problem. So it's difficult indeed, but it should not be a lose situation. It's a matter of people having to reskill themselves, more especially employers and entrepreneurs reskill themselves realign the thinking that now you're no longer just a resource, but you're supposed to be a problem solver. So it's no longer about I exist to work 8 to 5, and I can sit there as long as I attend, I'm at work. The question is, the problem that you are there to solve, does it require someone to be sitting there 8 to 5? If it does not, it's just a matter of time before your employer starts speaking retrenchment. So those are the challenges that we are focusing on. My sense is that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
So to me, that what you're saying brings a bit of catch-22, right? So as a small business owner, I'm forced to bootstrap in order to keep my company going, because I don't have necessarily the large budgets to put in all the systems and processes and tools that I actually need in the business to keep it running. So we often generally run a lot on the free apps that are out there, the free pieces of software that are out there in order to manage our businesses. So there's a need for me to employ somewhere along the pipeline, but I can't keep a person busy for a full 8 hours a day. And you mentioned something like labor laws coming into play. Is that not a case for us to then alter the labor laws so that they can accommodate and make it more easier for me as a small business employer to say, look, I can employ you, but I can't keep you busy for 8 hours a day, every single day. But can we have a more freelance type of relationship that does not mean that I'm infringing on any labor laws? Because it gets tight, you know, once we've renewed that contract over a certain period of time, then I'm overstepping the boundaries. But we're not catering for that future of work conversation and the need and availability conversation because of the labor law structure.
Well, the criticism against our labor laws, I think it's one that has been around for quite some time. The unions have been anti any sentiment that says our labor laws need to be relaxed. But when one looks at, I recently looked at the World Economic Forum report, and what they were saying is that when businesses are considering a location, first thing that comes to mind is the availability of talent. The second one becomes the cost of labor. The labor laws is number 3 out of 4. So that comes a bit down, second half. So my sense is that I don't believe that our labor laws are hampering any growth. Yes, I'm a labor law specialist, one will say it benefits us if it is complex in labor. But I don't believe that, because our laws are constantly being revised or case law. Might not be through legislation, but cases, as things stands, one can restructure for reasons of economy, where you simply say, I need to be more profitable. The law says, yes, you are allowed to restructure for those reasons. You can restructure for reasons related to technological advancements. Our law says, yes, you can. It's just that it says you need to do it in accordance with the process. You just need to follow the process. And that's where the criticism comes in, where people will say, well, the process is prolonged and so on and so forth. But then that has to be looked at in context of where we come from as a country. So my sense is that the labor laws as they stand, from our perspective, they should not be hampering any small businesses, provided that processes are followed properly, as they should be, in the spirit of the letter of the law. So what's happening now is that you will find unions frustrating the process. That's not what the law made provision for. Those are politics coming to play. And they'll come into play regardless of what the law says. So those are politics. But if people were to play according to the rules of the game, it should not hamper any progress.
Do we have time to take 1 or 2 questions?
Can I just one quick thing?
No, I don't think that the labor law is any issue either anymore. I think businesses the larger businesses fail to understand what it means for somebody self-employed. Hey, your medical aid, if you want to get it, is absolutely ridiculous. Whereas if you work for a company, you get discounts or whatsoever. It's facilitated. All those little things are not catered for in
that's where the major difference is. I don't think the labor law in South Africa is any different from labor laws in Western Europe, where there's a large contingency of self-employed people who work together here on a project and then with somebody else on another project. That loose environment.
And then we have to close because I'm being looked at with daggering eyes.
Okay, thank you everybody. My question is directed to Thabang. Thabang, I'm a new attendee in the field. I got admitted in February. I had to leave Ramgoka attendees and conveniences because actually I want to ask you, as an employment was there at Cliffe and Dekker, how do you deal with this situation that as entrepreneurs who are qualified lawyers, we don't have time to come and do our passion? Because not that I don't like law, I love it. That's another thing. So please highlight that for me because I'm not practicing anymore. I left because I'm concentrating in my business now.
Can I ask you to just repeat that? You were saying you don't have time to?
Maybe I asked it on the wrong way. In the firms currently, this is what is happening. I think in your firm it also happening. We can't leave work around 4:30 or 4 o'clock to go and concentrate in the other aspects of life. Like I can't go around 4:30 and do my other business. If I leave around 4:30, it's fine, but I'm going to be in trouble. They'll be like I'm not fit enough for that.
Yeah, no, I get your point. I guess the nature of the industry itself, being in legal practice, it's not your 9 to 5 kind of a job. You're at work even when you're at home. And obviously, if you have other interests, such as venturing into business, it's things that one will need to be upfront about. You need to, as you enter the employment arena, you need to disclose those things upfront and make sure that the person who's employing you is fully aware that you've got a business that you need to take care of. Then as you structure obviously your contract and the terms of engagement, you will then structure them with that in mind. And when the work is allocated and distributed, that will be kept in mind. What we recently started doing as law firms, big firms, is that you'll find that we are willing to take someone 3 days a week. Some people will say, I don't want to work the entire week. I am prepared to engage me 3 days a week, and then what will those terms be? So that's now, and I think that's going to be the future of law firms. We're no longer going to be employing people on a full-time basis, but I will employ you to be part of my talent pool, where I can call upon you as and when I need your skill and your time. Because obviously I bill per time. So if I bill per time and I've got you for 8 hours yet, during that 8 hours I can only sell 2 hours of your time, it's basically me now finding you sitting there. So that's the future of law firms. We've started engaging in that kind of a model, and I'm quite aware that other law firms, but big firms, have also engaged in that kind of model. So I will say, as you engage with your employer, or prospective employer, just make it clear. Tell them where you are, what your ambitions are. It's not going to close the door totally. Yes, it might close the door with one employer, but other employers will appreciate the fact that you've got that a business-minded person, because right now we need people that can think beyond being a lawyer.
Well done on that, I think. Yeah, it's not only going to be law firms. Most companies will go that route. And that means for many people will get a portfolio lifestyle. You're not having one job, you have maybe 2, 3, 4 different income streams.
So you know you're getting fired when everybody's going. Alright. Unfortunately, I have to wrap this up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for such an engaging conversation. I think you've put in all spheres as to what we need to take home, go home with and implement in our businesses. I hope everyone else here has gotten at least their mind sparked. I'm hoping to see you guys more and more into sessions where you are learning how to adapt to this environment versus just coming to listen as to what is possible. But go in there and learn yourself. Get yourself into coding environments to understand what coding is. You don't have to be the coder for the rest of your life. but just to understand the basic principles as to what the fourth industrial revolution is governed by, what makes it move, what are the policies, what opportunities exist into that, and see how much of it you can adapt into your business so that your business does not become obsolete in the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you so much for engaging.